the military itself pulled down so many walls. If you look at segregation and how segregation, desegregation started in the military, and it was out of necessity. It was because we needed, in order to have a military that can rise and do everything it needs from everybody, you cannot have a segregated military to be effective.
Hey, Grill fam, it's Gerren Keith Gaynor, White House correspondent and managing editor of politics at theGrio. And I'm here with Deputy Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Tanya Bradsher. Deputy Secretary, welcome to theGrio. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Gerren. It is fabulous to be here. Thank you so much.
So congratulations to you. You just a couple of months ago were confirmed as Deputy Secretary. You are now the highest ranking woman and Black woman at the VA. How are you adjusting to the new role, and what does it mean for you to occupy such a historic space?
Thank you so much. I was sworn in September 20th, and it's an incredibly personal journey for me. I am a fourth generation Army soldier. My grandfather was a driver in World War II. My great grandfather was a driver in World War II. World War I. My grandfather was also served in World War II. My dad was drafted for Vietnam, didn't end up going, but served 20 years. And I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I retired in 2013 after serving 20 years. And my husband served 30 years as well. And so, I come from a family of service, of proud Army service. And so being the Deputy Secretary of the VA is just an incredible honor that I get to take care of veterans in a way that I couldn't. I was previously the Chief of Staff, and so I've been at the VA since March of 2021. Secretary McDonough asked me to come over, and so it's just been an honor to be here. But as Deputy Secretary, I'm hopeful to use this platform to reach out to more of our minority veterans, our untethered veterans, our women veterans, and hoping that by seeing me as Deputy Secretary, that folks who maybe have tried the VA once and weren't satisfied, look at an opportunity to come back and try again.
Like you mentioned, you're not new to VA, and during your service, and thank you for your service, by the way, you served in the National Security Council. You served in the office of the Defense Secretary. Did you ever think that during your years of service to this country, to the federal government, that you would end up where you are today?
Absolutely not. I'm incredibly blessed and honored, and I had no idea when I retired in 2013 that this would be the opportunities that I would have in government. And, I'm thankful to the Biden-Harris administration for giving me this opportunity, and for the Senate for confirming me, and Secretary McDonough for seeing something in me that it took me a minute to see in myself, to be honest.
Can you elaborate about that? I think many Black Americans who climb the ladder, and I certainly can relate covering the White House, often feel that. Can you elaborate about that feeling?
I've always worked hard. I've always tried to have pride in my work, and I have been incredibly fortunate throughout my career that people saw more in me than I could see in myself, and would present options. And I'm sure probably the same with you, with being on the White House beat, that are just being recognized for your hard work. It's sometimes it's a little intimidating, and it's a little daunting. And so to go through the confirmation process, which is challenging, and to have someone, and to have just so many people, to be honest, there were so many within the White House who were so supportive of my confirmation, and my VA family were so supportive. But it can be really intimidating, especially when you're breaking those barriers. A Black woman had never even served as acting before in this role, let alone a woman ever being confirmed in this role. I'm a 9/11 veteran. I deployed to Iraq. I'm the first 9/11 veteran to serve in this role. And, it definitely can be a little overwhelming. But what I relied on initially was the confidence that others had in me, until I could develop the confidence in myself. and I'm still learning, you know, I'm not even 2 months into the new role.
You also served at the time, you were actually at the Pentagon on 9/11. Can you tell me about that day and your experience that day?
Sure. So I was a captain. I was a joint staff intern. So I was super junior. There's not a lot of captains that run around the Pentagon. It's usually a very senior assignment for most folks. And I was pregnant with our second daughter. I have 3 daughters, John and I. And I just found out in August that I was pregnant. And it was a typical morning. It was a Tuesday. It was absolutely beautiful, Carolina blue sky. And we saw the first tower hit. And I worked at the time in Joint Staff Public Affairs. So I was a public affairs officer. When the first building was hit, we knew something was up. And then when the second building was hit, we knew the country was under attack. At that time, there was a woman that ran down the hallway and she was carrying her shoes and she ran barefoot. And we were just, it was kind of thrown away, and it kind of threw us all off a little bit. And next thing we knew, the alarms went off for us to evacuate, and none of us wanted to leave the building. We knew we were under attack. We knew when we saw that second plane hit that this was an attack, and begrudgingly we left the Pentagon and we're just talking, you know, just lots and lots of volume in the hallway as we're going out the exit. And then the minute you walked out the double doors, you saw the huge black plume of smoke. And that's when we realized something was wrong and that we were hit. And so we all went outside, and before me was an Air Force general, and we heard 2 jets fly by, and he said, "Those are our guys. We have command of the sky." And it was, you know, I'm Army, so it was the first time for me that I really was grateful for the United States Air Force in a way that I just didn't appreciate before. But when we saw the black plume, after about 10 minutes, we heard this thunderous crash. And we thought that was actually a second bomb. What it was, in hindsight, was the collapsing of the 5 floors. So many people actually survived the impact of the Pentagon because those floors held. And but when they came crashing down, that was when we actually left the Pentagon, because we were ready just to be outside and then to go back inside. But when that explosion happened, which was the floors, we went, and I walked to Crystal City. My husband was working there. He was supposed to move into the Pentagon on 1 October. And so I didn't know where he worked, which is kind of crazy, but I didn't know how to get to his office. So I called him on a payphone and so I met him, and that's when I found out that the 2 towers had fallen, because we were in transit at the time. And then my husband put me on the metro with one of his friends, and then he went into the building and he spent the night in the Pentagon that night. And then we went on 12-hour shifts. I worked days, he worked nights, and we had at the time a 2-year-old daughter, and thank goodness my mother helped take care of her during that time. And then our first meal together was October 7th of 2001. We had pancakes in what was called the POAC. At the time, it was the gym. And we had pancakes at 4 a.m. because I was shifting to night shift, and he was coming off nights and going back on days. And so we had one night that overlapped, and that's just how we lived. You know, just working in the National Military Command Center for me, and he worked in the Army Operations Center.
Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I could not imagine going through that. I was pretty young during 9/11 from New York City, and I remember what that felt like in the city. But 9/11, while it was a harrowing moment, it also was a moment that brought this country together. And I think about how divided sometimes the country feels today, especially with another conflict going on outside of the US. What can we learn from that moment, 9/11, and how united we were if we were to reflect on that day? What can we learn from that moment?
I think first and foremost, take nothing for granted. That our national defense is so vitally important, that the sacrifice that our service members make and made, you know, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, you know, to never forget the 9/11 itself. It's so easy, you know, it's been 22 years. And so I just think as a country, we have so much more in common than we disagree about. And, you know, I would, without going through another horrible incident like that, where we were attacked viciously in 4 different areas of our country, that that we can come together as a nation. I would love for that.
I would love for that as well. And Veterans Day is coming up, and I think about Black veterans, the many Black Americans who served in our U.S. military, including my father, who is deceased, who served in the Air Force. Would the U.S. military and would America be what it is today if it was not for the sacrifices of Black veterans in particular?
I don't think so. I, you know, I literally an hour ago was with Colonel Paris Davis, who Medal Honor recipient for Vietnam. He's actually gracious enough to talk to some of our VA employees over one of our buildings. You know, Black Americans have contributed so much in the military, and we serve at a disproportionate number. If just my family alone, we have 7 veterans, and I've got 3 daughters, and I'm kind of hoping for a 5th generation, but we'll see what happens. But, you know, I truly believe that the military itself has been, you know, has pulled down so many walls. You know, if you look at segregation and how segregation, you know, desegregation started in the military, and it was out of necessity. It was because we needed, in order to have a military that can rise and do everything it needs from everybody, you cannot have a segregated military to be effective. The same with incorporating women. So it's been so important that a lot of the advancements that we have made as a country actually started in the military. And so I truly feel that the benefits that we have been able to provide the nation at large has really just brought us together as a country, because it's really hard when you're deployed to Iraq or deployed to Afghanistan, or those that served in Vietnam, to be around people. It brings people together in such a way, and it's hard, it's very challenging, but it really identifies, going back to, we have so much more in common as Americans. And so the military has formed friendships and relationships throughout the country that has allowed us as a country to come together. And so it's our service, and, you know, being a part of a greater good. It's just, you know, it's part of who we are, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And
Thank you
I don't
for
have to
that
tell.
service, by the way. And I'm sorry for his loss.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't have to tell you the challenges that Black veterans face, especially as it relates to getting the services that are provided by the VA. There was a report recently about data coming from the VA that found that Black veterans are more than likely to be denied for benefits than their white counterparts. Why is that so, and what is some of the work that the VA is doing to alleviate those disparities?
Absolutely. So, you know, we did find that we had disparities when it came to our Black veterans, and we have put together a task force in VBA to take a hard look at what benefits are that were denied, that weren't equal among all. And so we are moving forward with that. But I do want to take this opportunity that if you were previously denied your benefits, please reapply. Please apply to the PACT Act. We have expanded benefits under President Biden since August of 2022. We are now offering 22 presumptives, which is goes into 276 conditions. And that is tied to Vietnam veterans who have hypertension, our 9/11 generation who were exposed to toxic exposures, be it burn pits or other particles. And so if you were previously denied, please resubmit and let's take a look. Give us an opportunity because we are here for you.
And last question for you, as we commemorate and honor our veterans on Veterans Day, how can we as Americans honor them, especially Black veterans?
I think especially, like, we probably have Black veterans in our family. Have them tell us their story. Let's not just let it go with them and really ask the questions. Tell me when you served. Tell me, what did you do? Where were you? What happened? How long were you in? I think there's so many times where it's not, maybe it's too late when we're trying to figure out if we can do a burial. But I think having those conversations, thanking our veterans, but go beyond just thanking them. Ask them their story, see what they'll share with you. I think you'll be blown away at the amazing service our Black veterans have done and where they have been and what they have seen.